What is up, everyone? It's your boy JSemp, and we are back here with another art video. Today I'm going to take you step by step on how I create a creature design. Basically, I'm going to be creating a unique character and take you through my process. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe, gently tap that like button. Yeah, let's get into it. Comment below, let me know if you guys find this video helpful and what videos you want to see more of in the future. So let's begin. So basically I start off all of my portraits, creature designs, doesn't matter. I started off with a base kind of construction sketch. And you can see here, I start with the basic circle, oval, and have the crossbars for the center of the face. And I always start my portraits with the nose. And I do this because the nose is the center of the face. Now, it's not the center of the head, the eyes are the center of the head, but the face itself, the nose is the center. And I like to do that because I can build off from the nose. And you can see here, I'm doing that by proceeding with the eyes and then starting off with the ears. Now, when it comes to creature design, I like to base everything, at least my humanoid designs, base everything on a humanoid basis. And that means, creating the anatomy that is very similar to a human, but with slight alterations. So here, for example, you can see that I decided to do a double nostriled nose, make the ears a little more pointy, and add kind of little curvature to the ears and stuff like that. And I do this because I go into my pieces not really knowing anything about the creature that I'm going to be creating. But I like to start off by doing these slight alterations and kind of looking how it's formulating into something new, and then using my imagination to try to create some sort of lore behind that. And so by creating these pointy ears, I was like, I kind of like this pointy, rigid look. And so I decided to add some more kind of pointy things on the jaw itself. And that gave this creature a very kind of stern type of vibe to him. So I decided, hey, why not add some really furrowed eyebrows and stuff like that. Now, I always like to toy with the idea of adding horns to my creatures. And that's because when I do that, it can add a lot of flow to the piece. And what I mean by that is the horns will draw you out and around the piece, but then back in. Now you can see shortly what I'm gonna do is basically show you a trick of symmetry. Now, symmetry within the face, you can only really do that from, practice. But when it comes to complex things like the horns, you just saw me do this thing where I kind of did this, right, with the horns itself. I had my pencil in one hand and I had my finger on the other, and I traced the horn that I already did with my finger while having my pencil in the other hand. And I do this because it's easy to create symmetry when you're moving your fingers at the same time, but it's harder to do it when you're trying to mimic something. So if I were to do this, right, and then do the same thing after, it's really hard to create that symmetry. So a little trick that I do when I'm creating symmetry with horns and just other complex things is doing that thing where I have the pencil in one hand and I'm tracing the other side with the other. And it doesn't make it perfect, but it gives you a brief outline and a good guideline to really, work the symmetry a lot better. And it's never perfect. And it's okay for it to not be perfect because, in nature, things aren't perfectly symmetrical. No one's face is perfectly symmetrical. Wild animals don't have perfectly symmetrical horns and stuff like that. So now what I'm doing is just refining everything. I'm refining the details in the horns, making sure it's a clean outline, because there's nothing wrong with doing a really rough sketch first, and then refining it after. It doesn't need to be perfectly refined right off the bat. So the next step that I'm doing is basically adding some rendering, which in this case is shading. I decided to not do color for this one because I wanted to give it a very vintage black and white feel. So when it comes to, I'm explaining the symmetry thing again. When it comes to rendering, I say this I like to use the word rendering because it's basically taking a two-dimensional or a simple sketch and making it more and more realistic. And shading can do just that. Now, shading is another thing, as well as other things with art, you can only get better at it with practice. And you can see me here, I'm kind of doing one part of the face at a time. So I like to do the eyes, I like to do the nose, and then I like to do the lips. I know there's other artists that like to do it in layers with the whole face, but I really like to render out each of the individual parts at a time, because then I get to gauge, oh, what values do I want? What looks best for this creature? And especially when I'm doing creature design, sometimes when I'm shading, I add extra little things. Like for example, the eye, I add more bags under the eye, and made the kind of cheekbone or zygomatic more pronounced. And those are all things that can, you can only really do with shading. And so right now you can see me, I'm developing the little pointer things on the jawline, and I decided instead of making them like hard skin, I decided to make them into thorns. And then I did this on live stream, and someone gave me the idea to name this creature Thorn. And a lot comes out of creating lore and creating names and giving names to your creatures, because then it makes you think a lot more about, oh, hey, there's a backstory to this creature. What is this backstory? And once you start thinking about things like that, you end up creating more and more details that may not be present, but you can add later. So then I was like, oh, is this creature the king of his kind of people and his type of race of creatures, or whatever he is? I haven't really created much lore behind this creature, but I looked at the very immaculate horns that he had, and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to give this creature a crown, but the horns were in the way. And so again, working with what I had, I was like, the way in which these horns were kind of pointed to the center of the head, why not make the crown be held up by the horns, and be a small crown, right? It doesn't need to be a big crown, but it's more of a symbol. And so I really liked that, because it added a lot more symmetry, and it added another point of attention, right? When you have a bunch of different points of attention in your pieces, then it makes the viewer look at it longer and read more into it, right? But you don't want something to be too overbearing, which is why I also didn't want to have a large crown. See, for example, the main focal point of this piece is the creature itself, right? That portrait. And again, I'm adding and rendering out the horns now. But what I realized, and I made this point when I was doing the live stream, was that the fact that I didn't add eyes to this creature drew the eyes of the audience, right? And that's because, I love to draw eyes. I think eyes are the life of the piece. But the fact that I didn't end up drawing eyes on this, it puts it into oh, why aren't there eyes on this creature? And that leads you more into it. And another reason why I did that is because I was using a regular, whatever this pencil is. I don't know what it's, number 2 pencil. I think it's HB pencil. I'm not entirely sure, but you can't really get dark darks, and with that you have a lot of neutral grays in the piece, and you have a lot of white space. And so if I were to shade in the eyes, I would have felt like I was, I wouldn't have done the eyes justice. So by leaving them blank, you can really, it draws in the viewer a lot more. So now I'm just rendering out the horns. I added a lot of pattern to it. And with horns, you don't need to add a lot of pattern. You don't need to add a lot of shading. But I wanted to give them a lot more depth. And that's because, sometimes you want to add texture and details, but you don't want to overdo it. But I thought it was definitely something that I could do, because they were on the periphery of the piece. And so by adding details on the periphery, I didn't think it took too much away from the character and creature itself. Now, this is a creature that I definitely look forward to developing more in the future. I was really happy with the way it turned out. And again, I was kind of winging it. I was also taking some suggestions from my audience. So, I will be live streaming a lot more in the future, and I don't really want to be posting the live streams after the fact, because I don't think anyone really wants to watch a 2-hour video. But if you do, let me know in the comments. I do have the live stream saved, and I plan on saving all my live streams, so in the future, if you do want to watch that, I can always post it. But with that being said, I think I have concluded this piece, and I am going to go back to my outro. Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope you guys got a lot out of my process and can apply some of those things to your own process. I hope all of you guys are staying safe during quarantine. Hopefully things are kind of getting better slowly but surely. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe, gently tap that like button, and yeah.